This is the Jeff Santos Show.
34 minutes past the hour. A little Eddie Vedder and Pearl Jam for you here. An indication that something about the Great Pacific Northwest is about to happen here on the Jeff Santos Show. We usually play a lot of Mark Taylor-Canfield's original music that he wrote and played on and sang, but there's nothing like a little Eddie Vedder. And nothing wrong with a little Jeremy. It is the Jeff Santos Show, and it is time to talk to our good friend. You can spoke to him on a number of issues, and we'll do that today. Mark Taylor-Canfield. Again, you can check him out on Daily Kos. Check him out on Capitol Hill Times in Seattle. And right here on the Jeff Santos Show every other Sunday. It is great to have Mark back on with us. Happy Sunday, Mark. How are you?
Hey, Jeff. Good to talk to you again. If folks want to check out my news and commentary, you can go to YouTube, to my YouTube channel. We have about 400 videos, original videos uploaded now. And check out the MTC report, where I talk a lot about what's happening in the U.S. and our problem with democracy. And I just wanted to mention something really quick. You know, it's awesome hearing Robert Craig. He is a brilliant man. It's great educating myself by listening to what he has to say, especially his views on the Democratic Party and what needs to happen.
So good.
This progressive movement. I wanted to say, though, that we do have a big problem, and that is that down there in Texas during the primaries, Kathleen Wall spent $6 million. She's a major Republican donor, but she decided to run for Congress in the 2nd District, spent $6 million, Jeff, for 14,499 votes. That means $480 per vote. And as long as we have a system in the United States where only millionaires can run for office, we're going to have a problem. Where's the grassroots working class representation when it takes $6 million to run for a losing campaign for Congress in the United States? It's outrageous. Citizens United needs to be overturned. We need campaign finance reform at every turn in every state, on the local level, building all the way up to Congress, so we can get people in the Congress, like our Congresswoman here from Washington State, Pramelia Jayapal, who is for the working class folks and not just out there to make the Koch brothers richer.
Well said, and, you know, we talked about it earlier, if you can hear me, Mark, basically that if we are going to be a majority party, and we are going to be a party that changes why people vote for their local city councilor or state rep or state senator or congressperson, if they vote on the Republican side because they feel that they are going to do the best for them as working class, middle class Americans, then we're going to have to show who we're about. And one of the ways to do that is to elect people who are teachers and nurses and firefighters and people who are working in a union or a construction union. That's who we can run, and they are close to those 70%, as Robert Craig talked about. And I have said that, you know, about 30% have a college degree in this country. And, you know, so when you're talking to somebody who's a high school graduate, maybe has a couple of years of school, you know, we're not talking about whether there's a way for them to make $250,000 or $300,000. We're talking about making, you know, $40,000 to $60,000 or to $80,000, and that is where we're at. And if we can't get to that level, then, you know, you might as well just give up and be in the minority party, because you're never going to be the majority. I mean, it's going to stay the minority, that is. But I want to talk to you about something that is the economic inequality that you mentioned is so true. And for a lot of people, you know, the $15 minimum wage is a roadmap to help on that issue. But the one thing that I worry about that Seattle is exporting, and that is Amazon. And there are 20 cities/regions of the country, including Boston, that is putting a lot of hope into receiving the jobs. Could be up to 50,000 new jobs, which is a ton of jobs. But what does it do? You know, this week, Toys R Us closed, and some analysts speculated that one of the reasons why Toys R Us closed is the fact that a lot of people are shopping online. Now, I don't have any problem with people shopping online as a whole, but I think if it takes away from jobs, whether Toys R Us or Sears, which is on their last legs, or Kmart, which is on their last legs, are we just going to have one store to go shopping at Walmart or Target, and that's it? Is it just going to be one place to shop for a bank? I mean, this is what we're coming to. It's maybe the Reagan-Bush dream, but the fact is that to me, the Republican dream is that this is something that has to stop. And I don't know, as great as the Washington Post has been in terms of journalism, and of course Amazon runs that, and I'm glad that the Whole Foods which also is owned by Amazon, is now a little cheaper for my salmon or other things that I go there for. But the fact is that this to me is a major crisis, which a lot of media is not talking about. You're up close and personal. You have seen the high rent districts and the home costs, triple in Seattle. Talk to me about the concern, and if there's anybody in Seattle that's saying, hey, folks, and the rest of the contiguous 48, that, you got to be careful here. It may not be everything that you're thinking it's going to be.
Well, Jeff, there have been a few articles in the Seattle Times. I've, of course, written extensively about it and talk about it quite often. If you like skyrocketing rents and you like the disappearance of obviously not only just mom and pop shops, locally family-owned businesses, but now, major chains, welcome to Amazon world. Jeff Bezos is actually the person who bought the Washington Post. So you can't really say it's Amazon, but it's definitely part of the Jeff Bezos empire. All of these,
right.
All of these purchases are, in my mind, I also live in Seattle where, we're familiar with Microsoft and Bill Gates and Paul Allen and his, buying sports teams and Vulcan construction company, owning half the town. So I'm used to this idea of seeing major corporations, and Google has done the same thing, right? Just try to buy up everything. Remember when Microsoft wanted their own smartphone, and, how well did that go, right? They lost billions of dollars on that venture. But it's just this idea that we're just going to own everything, and I think that's where Amazon's at now, where it's almost megalomaniacal at this point. Once you're that wealthy, what more can you do with your money? You obviously have to buy sports teams and newspapers and corporations in order to make yourself feel like you're the top man, or whatever it is, top woman. So I think that's the phenomenon we've seen in Amazon, which is it's taken over millions of square feet of office space. It's built towers, there are cranes everywhere. I swear there must be about 80 construction cranes right now in the Seattle area, Jeff. I know that the number got up over 60, by last year, but the skyline is covered with cranes now. The skyline is changing every minute. I'm a tourist in my own neighborhood. I don't even recognize what it looks like from one day to the next because, any building over 20 years old is suddenly demolished and then a new shiny tower goes up. And so, it's been it's a big transition for the city. Amazon itself claimed that, and still do that, this is a city building project. This is not just a corporate headquarters in Seattle. They are helping plan the city, the new look of Seattle. So it's a huge thing when Amazon moves into your town. If they're going to hire 40,000 people and take over, dozens of square blocks of real estate, you can bet that the real estate prices are going to skyrocket, that a lot of people are going to be moving into your town, or at least working in your town. Now, one of the problems is that only 15%, and this is by Amazon's own numbers, only 15% of the employees that work at the headquarters in Seattle actually live within the city limits of Seattle or close to where they work. Most of them are commuting from outside the city where the rents are a little bit cheaper. And meanwhile, those of us who live in the city are, watching the rents skyrocket, which is why affordable housing and the $15 an hour minimum wage, these progressive issues are so important to people who live in Seattle. Without it, I don't know how people are going to survive here. It's like we'll just have a cost of people who can't afford to live in the city where they work. So if that's what you like, then welcome Amazon into your town and give them lots of tax breaks.
No doubt. Well, a little bit of music as we go to commercial break here. This is the great work of a great journalist and great musician, Mark Taylor-Canfield. We'll come back and take your phone calls at 844-967-2789. It's the Jeff Santos Show that you're tuned into, part of the Revolution Radio Network. Here's a little bit more from Mark Taylor-Canfield, Donald Trump, and the jungle.
And so I thought it really important to document.
No collusion, no obstruction. He's a leaker. He's a leaker. He's a leaker. He's a leaker. He's a leaker.
Have no recollection of it.
This is the Jeff Santos Show.
He's beginning to sound a lot like Nixon. Everywhere he goes. Take a look at the TV screen. It's a Woodward and Bernstein dream. Better than Watergate and much bigger than before. He's beginning to act a lot like Nixon. Denials on every shore. But the thing that he'd like to see, dictatorship-ocracy, won't be tolerated anymore. He may think that he's tricky like Dick, but he's not quite so smart or as thick as like Willie or Dastardly Dick, like when Willie he couldn't say no to.
Oh, yes. The voice of one Mark Taylor-Canfield. And of course, Richard Nixon didn't have the problem with the porn actresses that Mr. Trump has and so on and so forth. But that's all right. The comparison is pretty close when it comes to the corruption of firing people, including Mr. The former FBI director and associate director the other day. It just seems to me that what we have here, Mark, is a guy out of control. But the answer to people who are bamboozled by Trump, who went to him because he spoke of their problems, particularly in the upper Midwest with trade and all that, is to sort of, as we talked about with Robert, is double down. We can do more. We can offer you a better prescription. We can give you a single-payer healthcare system which reduces your costs on a monthly basis. We can give you 4 years of free public university. And we can do a $15 minimum wage, which all the Republicans and Donald Trump are against. This is, to me, how you beat Trump at his populist game. I don't know what you feel, but I think that's the avenue. And you guys started the snowball, and it's all around the country now. It's on a lot of ballots in a lot of different cities and states around the country, and for $15 minimum wage. Your views there?
Well, it turned out to be a big issue in Seattle, in particular. We have our own problem here, which is that our state legislature, which up until now has been dominated by Republicans, at least one of the houses, they passed a statewide ban on rent control. So you're living in a city where the rents are tripling and there's no ability for the local government to respond to the crisis, which is a crisis of homelessness in Seattle, where you have 10,000 people in Martin Luther King Jr. County that have no permanent residence, a huge population of homelessness right behind Los Angeles and New York City, believe it or not. But the thing is that what appeals to people here and what got Jenny Durkan, the former U.S. attorney, elected as mayor, and what got folks like Pramila Jayapal elected to Congress are very much working class issues, even in a very tech-oriented city like Seattle, the sort of new Silicon Valley up here, with all these tech companies and software engineers and biomed as well. But there were basic working class issues like $15 an hour minimum wage, like affordable housing. Where are you going to live? Can you afford to live in your city? Basic issues about overdevelopment and gentrification, about racial inequity and economic inequity. Those were the issues that these candidates in this part of the country run on and win. And they do get a lot of support from independents and some conservatives and a lot of our revolution folks and the Democracy for America folks who are progressives up here. There's always this sort of coalition politics that takes place. It's not just the Democrats that run everything here, and those who are in control of the party at this point, if not our, two senators, but those folks who are chairing the party are now Bernie-crats in this part of the country. And so I think between the working class issues that even Shama Sawant, our alternative socialist city council member, ran on, those are the kind of issues that appeal to people across the board, whether they're conservative, independents, Democrats, or don't associate, with any particular party or political movement. It's the things that affect them in their daily lives that they really care about. And unfortunately, if you saw the conventions, a lot of those issues seem to get sort of left behind when it comes to, especially unfortunately, the Democrats, when it comes to the national campaigns. And so they're missing the boat on some of these issues in rural parts of Washington State, or even, the suburbs around Seattle, where people are concerned about, can I afford to live here? Can I get some decent health care and benefits for my job, for my family? Can I afford to buy a house? Those are the things that really affect people on a daily basis, and those are the issues that can be appealed to in order to get people out to vote. When it comes to just this, we hate Trump, or, Democrats versus Republicans, the political party battles, that doesn't appeal to folks as much who aren't, normally engaged in the system. They want something to bring them out to the ballots that means something to them personally, that's going to affect them personally and their families. And I also think that's a problem with some of the journalism that's gone on in this country, too, is that a lot of journalists have forgotten that, you're speaking to people who have daily issues in their lives that they encounter every day. And if you're not addressing them as a journalist, and you're just talking, about what's happening in D.C. and the horse race and rubbing elbows with, the powerful politicians, then you're kind of missing the boat, too. That's not really how most people live. Most people are working every day, and they're working class Joes and Janes, and they just want to get through the day and have some decent health insurance for their kids and be able to put them through school, buy a nice house, have a good car, one they can get around with and go on vacation, and have a decent life.
It's the John Cougar Mellencamp vacation in the Gulf of Mexico. You're exactly right. And, it's just different parts of the country doing their ways to find a couple of weeks to spend with the kids, and they're not going to be jetting off to Milan or Paris or the Riviera. So that's exactly the case. Let me ask you about this, though, Mark, and I think this is another part. Because people look at Seattle as they have in the Silicon Valley in Northern California, this is the future. This is the leadership. We heard Hillary Clinton talking about, where were the people who have created the diversity in the country and all this, and not those places that she lost big time, and even campaign in Wisconsin as an example. And I think, to me, that is still, unfortunately, in some parts, and probably parts that still control the leadership of the Democratic Party, still in their mindset. And they're afraid to go after, cutting the military defense budget. They're still afraid to go after and promote single-payer health care or 4 years of free university, unless there's a lot of caveats to it. So this is the problem that I think that is still there. And, maybe what we really need here is to really get brand new leadership. And maybe that will happen if the Democrats win back the House and Senate. Or, they'll say, Pelosi and Schumer, they got us there, so we'll have to give it to them one more time. Well, one more time means, you could potentially lose in 2 years as well. So your views on that before we roll.
Well, yeah, I would agree that, folks in my part of the country are not going to be too excited if you see the same leadership on the Democratic National Committee or in the Houses of Congress. I mean, they want change. We're struggling with our own two senators, Patty Murray and Maria Cantwell, because they don't seem to be on the cutting edge of the progressive movement anymore. So that's where we're at up here.
No doubt. Mark Taylor-Canfield, thank you, sir. It's great to have you back on, and we'll look forward to doing a lot more in the coming weeks. Check out all of his websites, all of his work. He does it great, not only in journalism but in music too. Mark, all the best, my friend.
He's a leaker.
Thanks, Jeff. You're the best. You guys keep rocking.
We will, in the free world. Thanks, man. It is the Jeff Santos Show. We're right back after this timeout. Herb Boyd's on deck.
Nothing.
I did not have any recollection. I did not remember. I did not remember that. Leaker.
Because I thought that might prompt the appointment of a special counsel.
I don't recall. I don't recall.
My name is Adam Holmes, and I'm proud to be union.
Adam, you're Director of Training for Painters District Council 7. What do you do?
I'm making sure that we're investing in our members. We're providing the safest and best trained painters, glazers, drywall finishers, and trade show workers in the industry, and we also do that at no cost to the taxpayers.
Why hire unions?
Because it costs less to be safe. We keep the contractor on the right side of OSHA and help keep the workmen's comp rates affordable. Join us, Painters and Allied Trades, District Council 7.
The Resistance is live 7 days a week here on 1510 AM WRRD, Wisconsin's Resistance Radio. Tune in Sundays for Meet the Press with Chuck Todd from 11 a.m. to noon. Then it's the Jeff Santos Show, kicking ass for the middle class from 12 to 3 p.m. And Citizen Action's Battleground Wisconsin rages from 3 to 4 p.m. Get your groove on with Stu Man PM, politics and music, 4 to 6 p.m. with Stu Daniels. Always streaming at newstalk1510am.com, Wisconsin's Resistance Radio. You are listening to 1510 AM WRRD Waukesha, Milwaukee, and 1580 AM WTTN Columbus, Wisconsin's Resistance Radio Network.
The McCabe firing, election in Russia. I'm Ann Cates. 2 Republicans on the Senate Judiciary Committee want to review the firing of FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe. And California Congressman Adam Schiff, the ranking Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, tells ABC's This Week that President Trump has a personal vendetta.
I think the president's badgering of the Attorney General, his urging that he be fired before his pension could vest, and the fact that McCabe and every other of the James Comey associates, his general counsel Baker, his chief of staff Ray Bickey, who corroborate James Comey on the issue of potential obstruction of justice, every one of them has been targeted by the administration, by the Republicans in Congress.
Polls have closed in Russia, where Vladimir Putin is expected to win another term as president. Correspondent Frederick Pleitkin.
We just received the first exit poll here from the Russian election. Vladimir Putin is at around a little less than 74% of the votes that have been counted so far. I think it's about 21% of the votes here in the country.
Legislators in Kentucky have approved a bill to limit underage marriages after the measure sparked debate about parental rights.
Senate Bill 48 passed the House unanimously after passing the Senate earlier this month. It would make the legal age to be married in Kentucky 18, but would allow 17-year-olds to marry with the permission of family or district court judges. Legislators say the bill's intended to protect girls sexually exploited by older men, which is believed to be common in marriages involving underage girls. I'm Clayton Neville.
Frictions over global trade loom over the G20 meeting of major world economies, which opens tomorrow in Buenos Aires. President Trump's plan to impose tariffs on steel and aluminum sent a tremor through global markets and angered U.S. trade partners who have said they are not afraid.
Wouldn't she talk almost there, almost home? And maybe we're almost, but almost doesn't win in November unless you have all the stacks in place, and we're not there yet, frankly, Robert. We need to coalesce around an FDR strategy. Now, the Republicans, are telling us, oh, you only have to run against Mr. Trump. That's all you got to do. I saw the guy from National Review on today. The typical BS that comes out of their mouths. They want it to be about nothing and it be about Trump's personality because they'll know that they'll win people by who will defend Trump. So they don't want an agenda. Particularly, they don't want a populist progressive agenda that is like FDR. So that's the thing that Democrats have to learn. Your view on that?
Well, it's a brand new politics. I mean, Donald Trump was elected with the highest negatives anyone's ever imagined. It sort of threw modern political theory and science on its head, right? And the Hillary campaign put in record amounts of spending. I mean, just ungodly amounts of spending, all focused on him and his scandals. And it didn't work. When people are not seeing that this is a new paradigm, that people like him because he is not a regular politician, right? Because he is he's a reality star. And a reality star can take on all sorts of water that a standard politician cannot. A Walter Mondale could barely take on any water whatsoever, right?
Right,
this
exactly.
Guy has Teflon because the character he set up is not dependent upon him being seen as a great statesman, knows anything, or is mentally balanced, or anything like that. It's because he's raging against what they see as the system, right? Even though he's really a creature of the system. That's the irony of it. And
well,
so
Keith, you
really
just raised a good point. We got to play a little Keith, a little Rage Against the Machine going out to commercial here. But, I think you're exactly right, Robert. That's what they use, and that's what the Republicans have been doing for years. They take an issue that to the low information voter sounds like it's anti-establishment, a little bit of a populism. Oh, a government is destroying you. It's making you, really, contingent. It's a Soviet type of system. You're never going to be more than just average. You got to be better. And they do it very well. And they've been doing it very well for 40 years plus. And the Democrats better get aware of the fact that they're in a game that is not about, as Bill Maher said the other night, this is not a game of, what kind of color are you? This is a tough, hard-nosed game. And if the Democrats are going to bring forward new voters, they're certainly not going to do it with the philosophies of the past presidential candidates that we've had. I can tell you that. Nominees, in particular. Did we lose Robert?
Oh, I'm here. I thought we were going to break. So
no, go right ahead. No break in this segment. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
sorry about that.
Coming up.
You mentioned the producer. So anyway.
Yeah. No worries.
I couldn't agree more that that's the case. And, you had it, I think it was this weekend, at least it's being reported this weekend, that Hillary went overseas and made a major speech that's been highly reported,
India.
Where she said that the backward parts of the country are the ones that turn to Trump, and that the forward-looking parts of the country, the ones that are diverse and innovative, so your San Francisco's, your Boston's, right, by the code language, were not.
Coastal
and
cities.
This is exactly the kind of division that cost her the election. And people, in Westmoreland County and Washington County, that's Connor Lamb's district, red areas, don't see anything in what Hillary's offering that's going to help them, because she's about knowledge workers, right? She's about some sort of future economy. She's about San Francisco, right, and the Silicon Valley. And that's highly problematic. We still have a country where about 28% of the population has a bachelor's degree. So what that means is when you run about on getting good jobs for college-educated people, everyone else, working class folks, can get the message that you're not talking about me, and you don't care.
70% of the country
was outsourced. Right. My manufacturing job is outsourced. The jobs that are available are shit jobs. I have 2 or 3 of them, and no health care, and you're going to do nothing for me. And so that's where it is. And they have that versus Trump, where he foments against and says he's going to do something for them. And he appeals to them as one of them, because he's attacking the quote-unquote enemy, Nancy Pelosi, who is not the enemy. We know that. And so that's the setup. So you have to out-populist Trump with real populism. And the entire Democratic Party is not there. And that's the question. It's not about winning this election. It's how we win it and what kind of mandate it sets up and who is leading the new majority in Congress, and whether it's going to just try to block Trump for a couple of years, let's say that we take back the Senate or the House or both, or whether it's putting up a really aggressive populist agenda that Trump shows his true colors by vetoing and opposing.
Exactly.
He will do.
I'll give you one example, and we'll take a call from an aforementioned great city of San Francisco from Mark in a second here. But let's take the issue of infrastructure. He wants to do it, but he wants to privatize it. We'll say, okay, you're for infrastructure, so are we. We're going to make sure that every union, whether it's the Laborers International, our friends at the Steelworkers who helped in this big victory for Lamb the other day, and all those have good jobs at good wages, building the tracks on the railroads and the roads and the bridges for this country. At the same time, we're going to make it public, because we want to have everyone benefit from this. We don't want to have just a private railway where the private toll roads. And that's where you do. You're exactly right. And infrastructure is an issue that Trump wants to say, oh, well, this is what's going to get me our voters and our base voters back. Well, Democrats would take, all right, fine, we'll raise you one. Let's do X, Y, and Z. Let's make sure that we have railroads that go and transit lines that go from A to B that include the African-American community. And put it on a table. And that's how you run. You don't run on a social issue and say, oh, well, this is how we're going to get people to come out to vote. Or as our caller Mark had said, I should say John had said, that we're going to get, as Chuck Schumer was talking about a while ago, if we lose the voters in the blue-collar states of Ohio and Pennsylvania, we'll go ahead and win, social Republicans in Arizona and Nevada. That's the crazy talk. You just wipe out an entire group of that 70% that we just talked about. All right. Let's go to the phones. Bring in Mark from San Francisco. Mark, a union member. Great to have you back. How you doing, Mark?
I'm doing well. I think the message the Democrats have to pound home is the biggest issue of our time is income inequality. And the other thing is, as far as Wisconsin and California go, these are the key states to really get the House back. And in Wisconsin, somehow or other, the message has to be the Koch brothers own your state as long as Republicans are in office.
Robert, that's an interesting perspective. The Koch brothers owning the state. I know Walker is on one bended knee. We all remember the phone call.
Oh, absolutely. The phone call is just great to remember that because it reflects how they're the hirelings of the Koch brothers, not the other way around, right, where Trump is like, yes, Mr. Koch, absolutely, Mr. Koch. Is there anything I can get you, Mr. Koch, right? So, and you rarely see that because, and it's a little like Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, where the incumbent senator of the state is called the Silver Knight, and remember he's revealed as not a Silver Knight at all, but it's simply the puppet of the political boss of the state. Right. It's exactly like that. So they're the political bosses of the Republican Party because they're going to spend $1 billion in the next election. They set that in. They tried to beat Obama in 2012. I think they have even more money now in their broader network. Walker probably needs to spend $50 million and have $25 million in dark money if he has any chance of re-election this cycle right now. And so, of course, he's going to do whatever they want. And what they want to do is, fundamentally what they want to do in Nancy McLean's book, Democracy in Chains, illustrates this very well. They want to so weaken democracy that it cannot possibly check or regulate their private economic power. So this is democracy versus a new oligarchy, period. That's what the contest is, and that's what all the ideology and right-wing nostrums and alleged policies are really about.
I think you're so correct. The other part of this that I think is another big piece of this is that the Koch brothers, according to today's front page of the Boston Globe, are trying to bamboozle now Latinos. The sub-headline of the Annie Linsky story is that trying to talk up the tax cut bill as a way to help Latinos and Hispanics and trying to soften the deep anger toward Trump. Now, there's a lot of Latino population, Mark, in California, as we all know. Have you seen evidence of this in whether it's TV ads or anything else, trying to soft pedal, or is this Trump just sort of avoided an entire state altogether? Mark? I guess he's gone. All right,
everybody
Robert.
knows this tax cut was for the rich.
Yeah, no doubt. Robert, any final thoughts, my friend?
Well, since they lost the 2012 election, the Koch brothers have wanted to soften the edges of right-wing republicanism. So I'm sure they're going to try very hard to get Latino support and beyond, the aging members of the exile community in Cuba. It's pretty hard to do, but they have enough money to try. So they're going to try everything. They have fake Latino groups set up to try to pull people along on abortion, on school vouchers, because obviously the Latino community is very Catholic. Right. So they're going to spend their money trying to do that. We need it.
Thank you, Robert.
That's much more attractive.
Certainly will. We'll talk to you next week, hopefully. Thank you, Mark. We'll be right back. It's the Jeff Santos Show.
We are the People for People, People Corporation. We are a registered 501c3, totally legit. What do? We take your uncapped, dark money, tax-deductible donations, private or corporate, always anonymous, and we turn it into free speech. You know, educate Wisconsin through advertising, which may or may not be in coordination with the candidate. Isn't that illegal? It should be, but it's not under Wisconsin law, thanks Governor Scott Walker. Politicians in Wisconsin are beholden to the millionaire and billionaire sugar daddy and sugar mamas that finance their campaigns. Time to make them beholden to we the people for People Corporation. Give your tax-deductible donation to the real patriots, the People for People Corporation, P for ppc.org, P, the number 4, ppc.org. Have a drink at Regano's Roman Coin. This neighborhood corner tavern is as classic as the street it occupies. Family owned and operated since 1966, Regano's Roman Coin is located in a former Pabst Tide House on historic Brady Street, serving an array of craft beers with a focus on Wisconsin breweries. Also, weekly drink specials, trivia on Wednesdays, seasonal sporting events, parties hosted for all occasions, and pet friendly. Open 11 a.m. Tuesday through Friday, 10 a.m. Saturday and Sunday, closed on Monday. Regano's Roman Coin, Milwaukee's pet friendly, cash only order and classic corner tavern.
They'll challenge your authority, because that's what kids do. But this car is your territory, and in here, your word is law. So when you say you won't move until everyone's buckled up, you won't budge an inch until you hear that click. Never give up until they buckle up. A message from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council. For more information, visit safercar.gov/kidsbuckleup.
Whoa, long time no see. It's me, the Rock t-shirt in the back of your closet. Dude, remember? You crowd surfed in me, man. But you haven't worn me in like forever. I get it, you're retired, but I still got some rock left in me. So take me to Goodwill, where I can really make a difference.
Your donations to Goodwill create jobs, training programs, and education assistance for people in your community. To find your nearest donation center, go to goodwill.org. Donate stuff. Create jobs. A message from Goodwill and the Ad Council.
Please tune in Saturday, March 24th from noon to 3 p.m. when Earl Ingram anchors special coverage of the 10th Annual Wisconsin Grassroots Festival from Mazomanie, People Organizing for Solutions. Speakers include Lisa Graves, John Nichols, Matt Rothschild, Congressman Mark Pocan, and Senator Tammy Baldwin. Tune in right here on Wisconsin's Resistance Radio Network, Saturday, March 24th, noon to 3.
Good afternoon. For Wisconsin's Resistance Radio Network, my name is Keith Gusted. Here are some of your headlines. At least 3 schools in southeastern Wisconsin were closed due to threats of violence and nationwide protests by students against gun violence on Wednesday. School choice advocate Howard Fuller has withdrawn a proposal to move charter school into North Division High School here in Milwaukee. Accounts linked to Russia sent out tweets during Sherman Park unrest in Milwaukee to stoke the flames of racial tension, blame Democrats for the chaos, and spread conservative propaganda. And the company that owns WISN Radio in Milwaukee and WIBA in Madison filed for bankruptcy on Thursday. It's 53 right now in Waukesha, 58 on Brady Street, and probably close to 60 in Columbus. For Wisconsin's Resistance Radio Network, my name is Keith Gusted.